Hello, passengers, co-pilots, shotgun callers, blunderbuss bellowers, and midnight riders. Welcome to another episode of Full Moon Empty Road. As always, I'm Jeremy, and I'll be your driver tonight. This episode, just before we get into it, is going to be a little bit different, but not by much. Not by much. And I do want to get this out of the way before we continue. It is football time in Tennessee. It is the most wonderful time of the year for me. I'm a born and raised fan of the Tennessee Vols. And Thursday, I got to watch them come off a 59-10 win against Ball State. So, good start to the season for me. Let's just hope it continues this way. And we don't get halfway through the season and the wheels fall off. Fingers crossed. So, with the college football season kicking off, I had an idea to put together an episode of 3 different hauntings. I work with a Georgia fan and an Alabama fan, and I figured, with me being a Tennessee fan, we kind of cover 3 different SEC fan bases, more or less. So I would do a haunting in Georgia for my friend, co-worker, and listener AJ, who is a Georgia Bulldogs fan. I would do a haunting in Tuscaloosa for listener from the start, friend of mine, co-worker, Jackson. He is a diehard Alabama Crimson Tide fan. Swear I've never seen someone wear so much crimson. I had to. And we're going to do one for me, based out of Knoxville, Tennessee, because I should treat myself sometimes. So I'm gonna. So get in, buckle up, and let's see what kind of creepy stuff we can find and learn about out here in the tri-state area. Let's ride. Our first stop is going to take us into Crimson Tide country in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to the historic Drish House. The Drish House is considered one of the most haunted locations in Alabama. On top of that, it is also one of the oldest locations in Tuscaloosa. It was built in 1837 in the middle of 450 acres of land, and it was built by one of Tuscaloosa's earliest settlers, Dr. John R. Drish. Drish built the house for his new wife, Sarah Owen McKinney, and himself. And the two of them were wed in 1835, and they moved into the home in 1837. Drish was originally from Virginia and settled in Tuscaloosa in 1882. So again, one of Tuscaloosa's earliest settlers. And aside from being a doctor, John Drish was also a home builder, and he was the mastermind behind the Drish House. He built the house in a Greek revival style with Doric porticos. It's either Doric or Dorich. There's no H at the end, but with it being Greek revival style, I'm not sure if it's going to be Doric or Dorich. Doric porticos. And I actually didn't know what that meant, Doric porticos. So I ended up having to look it up, and that means second story porches. And they are on the front and rear of the house. 30 years, before I even go into that, I will say the house looks absolutely beautiful. In my research, did a lot of, during my research, saw a lot of pictures of it. It is an absolutely gorgeous house. And huge house, but beautiful nonetheless. So anywho, moving along. 30 years after moving into the home, John, who was a known drunk, he had reportedly gotten drunk one night, returned home, and fell down the staircase while he was drunk. And this was in 1867. Now, his wife Sarah passed away in 1884, and I didn't really see anything mentioned about her death other than the year it happened. It wasn't anything like, she died in a violent end or in an accident or anything. So I'm assuming she just lived out the rest of her days in that house and passed away. After their deaths, the house was bought a few times over the years. The first buyer was the Tuscaloosa Board of Education, and upon buying it, they opened up the Jemison School in 1906. For 19 years, the house remained a school, and in 1925, it was purchased by Charles Turner, and he actually used it for a parts warehouse for the Tuscaloosa Wrecking Company. That was actually something that was really cool to find out for me, like me personally, that is, because I work in the trucking industry, and, you know, I deal with wrecker companies all the time, and repair companies and whatnot. So to read that this was actually bought and used as a parts warehouse by wrecking company in Tuscaloosa was really cool, you know. Kind of like one of, you know, just, it was, hey, which is weird. I don't know if they're still around or not, because I don't think I've ever heard of them. Now they may not be in business anymore. They may have changed their name. Who knows? But I personally don't recognize the name. In 1940, it was purchased by Southside Baptist Church, and they added a sanctuary on one side and a Sunday school on the other. So they did their own little bit of renovations to it after they purchased it. And I think they actually held the property the longest up until the point that this became just known as the historic John R. Drish House. And it does tours these days. There's been a book written on it, and, you know, I don't actually know when. I think it actually got turned over to the Tuscaloosa Historical Society. I can't think of the name. I thought I took it down on my notes, but I didn't, because I always come halfway prepared. Anywho, after John's death, his wife Sarah kept the candles that were used during his funeral, and she said she was going to use them during her own funeral one day. According to the stories, after she died, the candles couldn't be found to use during her funeral, and it is believed that this angered her ghost, and she returned to the house. These days, reports are stated that there is a fire that can be seen on the third floor where she supposedly lit the candles. You know, no one could find them after she died, and she finds them and lights them in death. But no fires ever really discovered there. So, you know, I don't, and there's another term used. They also call it, they say it was described as ghost lights in the tower. Now, I'm not really sure if that was also, because there is phantom fire that is seen on the third story, but I don't know if that is what is also the ghost lights, because, you know, people have reported seeing the third floor tower on fire, and then it goes and gets investigated by the fire department. No fire's there. But I don't know if that actually falls in with the ghost lights, or if that's like lights winking in and out, you know. These these lights were discussed in a book titled 13 Alabama Ghosts in Jeffrey, and Jeffrey, not in Jeffrey. Jeffrey wasn't walking around with 13 Alabama ghosts in him. Oh man, that'd be fun. The book was written by Catherine Tucker Wyndham and Margaret Gillis Fye, and that's F-I-G-H, so I'm assuming that's pronounced Fye, not Fig or Figa, you know. I had to. I always love weird sounding or weird looking names, really. Because Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum, I don't think that's really a weird sounding name, but F-I-G-H, you know. Anywho, I'm getting off track. And I'm cracking myself up just because I'm a delight. Other reports include the sound of piano keys being played, moving objects, and unclear figures showing up in photographs being taken in the house. It didn't really specify what kind of unclear figures, like was it male, was it female, were there more than one, was it just one? So, kind of wonder, is this John and Sarah popping up in pictures taken? Because we are a generation of people who we're a photographic generation without photographic memories. That's at least that's me. I mean, I'm not big on taking a bunch of pictures or anything, but I darn sure don't have a photographic memory either. But there are pictures that have unclear figures in them, so kind of wonder, is that John or Sarah coming back to or maybe they never left the place. What do you think about it, about the Drish House? Is it a haunted house, or is it just a famous historical building with a almost 200-year history at this point? Let me know what you think. Our second stop brings us to Athens, Georgia, in the heart of Bulldog Country, to the Oconee Hill Cemetery. The cemetery opened in 1856 adjacent to the University of Georgia. It was purchased in 1855 by the city when burials became prohibited in the Old Town Cemetery on land owned by the university. So, I don't know if it was an issue with running out of space in the Old Town Cemetery, or if it was just one of those things where the landowners had finally decided, you know what, no one else is getting buried here. You need to procure your own land and set up your own cemetery. So the Oconee Cemetery was, I guess they broke ground on it. The land sits on 17 acres of land on the west side of the North Oconee River, and that is behind Sanford Stadium. So think about it this way, because there are a lot of prominent people from the university that are buried there, kind of just being buried in the shadow of Sanford Stadium. It's the final resting place of numerous University of Georgia presidents and chancellors. Wally Butts, former Georgia Bulldogs head coach, is buried there. Bill Hartman, former player, coach, and Washington Redskins player, is also buried there. And one other of note, well, I mean, there's numerous of note, but if I would have took down every one of them, that was more than just your average Joe, I guess you could say, we'd be here for an hour. Because, I mean, there were numerous presidents, numerous chancellors, numerous congressional type people, like people in the Senate, people in Congress, a few athletes, and one other to note is Ricky Wilson, former guitarist of the B-52s. So he tried to get buried there, and he succeeded. I had to. I'm sorry. Please don't turn this off. I had to. As for the hauntings, it turns out Oconee really only has one main haunting. And the legends say that a farmer drunkenly wrecked his carriage on a bridge near the cemetery and was killed. It is said these days that the carriage now appears between the old and new sections of the cemetery, and that he drives it near where he was buried during full moons. So if the moon is full and you're at Oconee Cemetery, you might see a I wonder if he's a Bulldog fan. Might see a just flat drunk Bulldog fan driving a carriage. Go Dogs! Crash. Oh man. But yeah, he is the main sighting. Really, I didn't see too much, which, I mean, it wasn't so much like, just in the time I had to do the research, that was the main haunting I found. So what do you think about that? Is there really a ghost carriage that rides around in the cemetery under the light of a full moon? Or is this just a final resting place for University of Georgia people of renown or note? Let me know what you think. Our third destination will bring us into volunteer country, docked up on the banks of the Tennessee River to the tune of Rocky Top and the sound of smoky howling. Knoxville, Tennessee, home of the Tennessee Volunteers and the haunted Bijou Theater. And I know what you're thinking, you sound really biased right now. Well, I'm not a fan of Alabama and I'm not a fan of Georgia, so, I mean, they're lucky they made it into the show. The Bijou Theater was formerly a hotel, a brothel, and a Civil War hospital. It is also the third oldest and possibly the most haunted location in Knoxville. Now, before I move forward on this, I'm going to say that this had a lot of history to it, and I'm not even condensing. I'm leaving a lot of different things out. Because I'm wondering if maybe one day I want to come back and do a deep dive on the actual episode, or who knows, because now, I'm also planning one day to do fan call-in shows, maybe if the channel grows big enough, not the channel, but I guess the podcast, if it grows big enough, then start looking at doing maybe fan call-in kind of things, and see if I can find someone who has investigated the Bijou, maybe have them on the show. That would be really cool. But I would need you, my listeners, to go out and spread the word. Help me out. Get more people. We'll start doing more shows. Anywho, during its time as a Civil War hospital, it treated soldiers from both sides of the war. So it has seen its fair share of death and suffering. Both sides of it. It may have even treated brothers that fought on the opposite side. Excuse me. According to stories around the theater, the most famous spirit in the place is General William Sanders. People have stated that they will catch glimpses of a soldier in uniform, and they believe it is the general that's kind of just, he's stuck around keeping an eye on the place. Maybe he still sees the hospital, and he's kind of trying to keep an eye on his soldiers that are injured or dying there. But he is one of the most, if not the most prominent figure that they do see there. He's definitely the most famous from what I've read. There have also been reports of activity in the women's bathroom on the second floor that's just off of the gallery. Numerous women have felt something tugging at the hem of their clothing, like maybe a child spirit. And I mean, with the different things that this place was over time, there's no telling what kind of activity is there or how many possible entities there are that roam the halls. Other sightings have included movement along a closed-off balcony and footsteps on the rafters of the theater. So, they're seeing a general from the time when it was a Civil War hospital. Well, they're seeing a soldier. They assume it's the general. There's a child ghost. Now, it was a brothel, and so, I mean, there's possibility that there were pregnancies that took place there. Maybe there were children that were raised in the place, or who knows, maybe, I mean, I've done a couple stories already about people who had kids that died very young, so there could be child ghosts, a child ghost or ghost of children there. The balcony that they do see movement on has actually been closed it's been closed off for like 20 years, I think. But it's been closed off for a while. But, movement in that balcony, footsteps in the rafters. I didn't see anything about like when it, during its time as a theater, anybody getting harmed. But like I say, I didn't do a deep dive on this one. I just kind of gathered up a couple of main points, and I do intend to at one point, if I can build a proper episode, I will probably do a deep dive on the Bijou. It had a lot of good information on it. There was a lot of stuff to sift through to say, let's go with this, or let's go with this, or let's hold off on that. let's definitely keep the history and hauntings to a minimum. But as for the Bijou Theater, what do you think on just the little bit we've discussed here? Being a former Civil War hospital, it would not surprise me if something is there. But let me know what you think on that. And let me know if you would want me to do a deep dive on the Bijou. Or, I don't think I could really do a deep dive on the Oconee, just because it didn't seem like it had a lot of information. And the Drish House is, to me, a little bit more history than haunting. Whereas the Bijou seemed like it was equal parts history, equal parts haunting. But let me know what you think, and let me know if you'd like to hear maybe the Bijou do a deep dive. This episode may not be as long as the others, and I do apologize for that. It was hard deciding on which 3 to go with. After reading on the Bijou Theater, that was when I was like, let's keep that one short. So, again, let me know what you think about the episode. Listener support is on. So if you want to, buy me an energy drink, buy me a coffee, getting kind of hungry, buy me some lunch, buy me some dinner. I'm kidding. I'm not necessarily kidding. If you want to help, support the channel, support the podcast, listener support is on. I'm still not quite, last week I finally hit 50 listeners, and it let me unlock ambassador ads, but I'm not 100% sure on those yet. The last thing it told me was that Anchor would reach out to me when they finally paired me with somebody, so they may not pair me with anybody, I don't know. And I may have just been pissing and moaning, hoping y'all would, we'd hit 50 unique listeners, and then nothing comes of it. But I've been thinking about doing shirts, maybe with the podcast logo on it, maybe beanies or hoodies, especially with it getting, it's September now, so it's going to start getting cold here in the next 3 months. I say 3 months because we're in Tennessee, and for some reason it doesn't get cold until December. It's not true. It actually starts getting cold in like November, here and there. Anywho, but so, I'm thinking about doing shirts, hoodies, hats, something like that. I think, if I can remember right, one of my other listeners, her sister-in-law, does like car decals or something. I'm not too 100% on it now. And one of my other listeners named Nate, he actually reached out to me after I had posted about the whole something to help the channel grow, and he did mention the decals as well. But I was thinking there was someone else that did either the decals or the shirts, and I can't remember. I do know one of my listeners, her sister-in-law, does the decals, I think, and then I think Jackson's girlfriend does t-shirts and stuff like that. So let me know what y'all would think about that. Would anybody who's listening represent the podcast, wear a shirt with the podcast logo on it, or maybe a beanie or a hoodie or something like that? I'm not too sure about hoodies, because I know I'd have to buy them all up front, I imagine, and I don't know, it would be really what I could afford. So let me know what y'all think about that. Check out my face on this radio broadcast. I'm looking good today. Check us out on Facebook, Full Moon Empty Road. I made a TikTok that I mentioned on the last episode. I actually made an upload last night. I was out driving after dark for once. Now, I work first shift now, so I'm never out on the roads after dark anymore. I'm usually home, and we got the kids and everything, so it's usually just coming straight home from work and all that good stuff. But I was actually on the road after dark the other night, got me a couple pictures, got me a TikTok with the trailer on it, and so I'm gonna probably start doing something like that, maybe as it starts getting darker a little bit earlier, maybe do some videos of going down a dark road and maybe making some TikToks. Go check that one out. Let me know what you think, because be honest with you. I'm still learning TikTok, still trying to figure it out. You can also drop me a line at Gmail, in my email at Gmail, at fullmoonemptyroad@gmail.com. And you can hit me up on Anchor. Just, I'm not hard to find. I'm not hard to get a hold of. Most of you know me personally. So y'all usually, y'all can also reach out to me personally. Those that don't know me personally, please stick to the podcast channels to reach out. I'll put a Q&A at the end of this one, and we'll see how that goes. Anyway, thank you so much for listening today. I've had a lot of fun with y'all. Had a lot of fun on this drive. Thanks again, and let's go home.